Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to our conversation. I'm Colin Line. I'm the Youth Ministry Coordinator here at St. Anne's, and with me, as usual, a good friend.
Father Matthew, I'm the pastor here at St. Anne's.
Awesome. Well, we made it. We're at the end of this little series.
Yes, our last of the 7 deadly sins.
There you go.
Right here.
Which is
no more sin.
I don't know if there's a joke that sloth was the last one to show up. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm sure there's something we could do there, But yeah, how's life with you? You're doing well. We were having you're commenting. I was a little late to coffee this morning. Were you giving us a hard time that all the guys were wearing shorts today?
Yes, yeah. All the guys who work at this church were all wearing shorts and short sleeves, and the best I can do is I can roll up my sleeves. I got that rolled up, but still I'm wearing shoes and socks and
it's not like there's not like a brand of like clerical black shorts. That's not a thing.
No, maybe they should be.
It's
a $100 idea right there. Clerical shorts.
There's a lot of clerics in the world, man.
There's not that many.
Anyways, that was fun. But
in your family here, there's some family drama going on.
Yeah, that's legitimately why I was a couple minutes late for coffee today. Was we were shooting a bit of a video because I am a born and raised diehard Habs fan, which is funny because I was born in Etobicoke Hospital and raised in Mississauga, so I'm technically like a Toronto kid.
Yeah.
But I'm like the ugly duckling. I was raised a Habs fan. The rest of my family was born in Montreal, and I lived in Montreal. Anyways, but my wife is from Winnipeg.
Oh, okay.
So, all things are simpatico and great, but now we got a bit of a situation.
Yeah.
And my oldest has followed mom and just cheered for the Jets. I think partly because she knows that it drives me nuts that she doesn't cheer for the Habs. And I've said, like, you can cheer for both teams, but she like actively cheers against the Habs, which is a bit of a thing.
She's old enough to do
that.
Okay,
get a rise out of me.
That's exciting.
Where my son Ezra, he kind of has followed dad. So we're
Okay.
2-2, but we have a little guy, Killian, who's almost a year and a half. And so we did a little video where we laid out jerseys, on the couch, and Ezra was by the Habs jersey, and Jacinta was by the Jets, and we kind of had Sharon put like dramatic music, and it was like, where is he gonna go?
Oh yeah,
and he chose the Habs.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he might change, free will. We'll see where it goes. But for the next like 2 weeks, anyways, it's all the guys are going
You
Habs.
have a very
and
small
girls
Habs jersey for him, or
yeah, we do have a few.
okay,
Yeah.
a few.
I mean, they got to grow into it.
I
Fandom
suppose, yeah.
is for life, right? So you got to get all the different sizes. So yeah, we're pretty excited. We're kind of
It's a bit of a gender divide and a hockey team divide. This will be a fun
yeah.
few
It wasn't
weeks in the
like
house- in the
planned
Line
that way,
household.
but
Oh,
that's how it's worked. But we were saying it's gonna be good practice. Like it's all in good fun. We love competition, but it's a good practice of like having fun, being competitive, a little bit of teasing, but like also where the line is, right? And sometimes kids overshoot it, so there'll be some
and adults
and adults. Let's be real. But Sharon and I had a good conversation. I was like, okay, we need to be good models. Okay, like no ridiculous pranks. Although it already started yesterday. I woke up to my daughter using like what do you call it, like mirror markers to like write "Go Jets Go" on all the bathroom windows.
Not Sharpie though. You're sure it was not Sharpie?
I haven't tried cleaning it yet, so now I'm a little paranoid.
So here's the real test though for me is say if it goes and say the Jets end up winning, do you root for the Jets in the next round or do you root against them?
100% I'll
How's it
root
go?
for the Jets. I cheer for the Jets when they play anybody else.
Oh, okay.
I have like a hierarchy of sports. I'm a total sports nerd.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like when it comes to hockey, it's like the Habs first, then the Flames because I lived in Calgary for a long time. Then it's like any original six team, but obviously it's like Leafs and Bruins at the bottom because.
See, I would go for a Canadian team over original six. Like if it was say Edmonton versus New York, I would go for Edmonton.
Well, see, but
for
there's
the
a
cup.
qualifier there.
Oh, okay.
Is I will always cheer for a Canadian team before a non.
Oh, okay, you just missed it in
Canadian
I missed it in your
Exactly.
hierarchy. Then. Yeah.
And then I go any place with winter.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when
Yeah.
Tampa beat the Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup, and well, basically we scored in Game 6, but Martin Gelin up, but we won't go there. That was really hard for me because it's like Tampa, like no snow, and they were like giving away tickets and whatever. It's a big aside. It's it's fun. It's a little bit of normal kind of life, and I know we might talk about the restrictions might be changing here a little bit in the month, and that's exciting. And I was even caught up just watching a few fans in the stadium for I think Game 6 with the Habs, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
I was like, wow,
Oh,
like
people.
this is the thing. But we might have even more of that here.
Yeah, it's coming. Well, we're following the rule changes as they come, watching the vaccination rates go, and it's looking good and exciting. So
Yeah.
and I think our main goal for ourselves, so we've gone through this whole pandemic at St. Anne's, was to be as open as we can within the public health guidance that we have.
Yeah.
And so we'll continue. We'll do as much as we can as soon as we can.
Yeah, we're cooking lots of kind of fun ideas for the the next few months here in the summer and the fall. Welcoming people and just celebrating and just receiving people as people are able to come back or engage more than maybe they have. And,
even this weekend, it was such a change because for Saturday I still had 30 people at the 5 and 7 o'clock masses, and then I come to the 9 o'clock mass and there's 110 people in church.
Yeah, that must have been
beautiful.
That must have been like a
there
weird.
So many people.
Yeah, weird but beautiful.
Oh, it felt so good.
But we're excited. Good stuff. Well, shall we dive into Mr. Sloth over
sports
here?
to sloth. So here we go. Which is sports could be a slothful thing. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
So this is the last of our 7 deadly sins on this series we've been doing. And one thing I think we will talk about here is often when people think about sloth, stereotypically, sloth means being lazy. Mm-hmm. But one thing I really wanted to show with this is that filling your day with busyness can also be a slothful thing, if you understand what it is.
Yeah.
And so the 2 definitions of sloth I'll do, and then we'll talk about how we can live this out.
Mm-hmm.
Or not that we should, but how it can affect us. So one understanding of sloth is resistance to the demands of love. And we all know that love sometimes means doing difficult things for the sake of love, but sometimes we don't want to do that. So resistance to the demands of love, or St. Thomas Aquinas, his definition is aversion to the divine good within us. Yeah. That God made us for heaven, for love, for holiness, and sometimes we choose not to have those things, or we fall short in them. So resistance to the demands of love, aversion to the divine good within us.
Yeah, I love when you peel back sometimes, the root words or some of the definitions, and some people might take it too academically, but sometimes it gives us insight of, hey, it's not just what we normally kind of take it as, right? Because it's easy to think of, Netflix, are you still watching? Exactly. That kind of guilt.
That's the sloth
which
question.
I mean is very much still a sloth thing. Let's not be wrong on this front, But this idea of like the busyness or to me, resistance or avoiding the demands of love is kind of the way I thought of it. As I sometimes say in my family, I was like, it was a bit of a spoon to the heart for me. I was like, because that's it's a sneaky but maybe a more deadlier way that I think sloth plays out, at least in my life.
Yeah.
So I appreciated kind of that clarity of kind of naming what it.
So
really
let's
is
walk
about.
through it then. So what would you say is a way that? Because I think for you it was like busyness as a way to avoid the demands of love.
Yeah.
Is that so? How is a way that person could do that? Could be busy and still slothful.
Yeah, it's choosing to do a thing that might not be bad, to avoid doing the thing that is more urgent and important, especially to your vocation. I guess if I take it home to my life of family life is, maybe I need to care for the kids because I'm home that day, but I find an excuse to stay out and do yard work for like 6 hours as opposed to like 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of leave them inside to do other stuff because maybe I just don't have the energy or the desire to interact with the kids that day.
And so,
right?
and the real demand of love, we would say, there is to spend time with your kids.
Yeah, and I mean,
is sort of
sometimes
an easier way to avoid that.
I mean, there's been the last few weekends. It's like, I've been fixing the lawn, I've been planting a garden, like things, and I have to fix a fence, and that's all real stuff. But then there's like, you find the actual little duties, like, does it have to get done today? Yeah. And maybe for me, kind of the markers, like when I examine at night, and my son asks to play a board game. And now it's 8:30 and it's time for bed. And I was like, but there was time at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or I feel guilty that I haven't read a book with my daughter in a while. And suddenly I look back to be like, there was a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And I chose something else. And so that idea of that aversion to the divine good, to say, okay, maybe, edging my lawn isn't an evil thing.
Yeah.
But the greater good of spending time with my kids on my weekend when I'm pretty busy during the week. So there's just that tension of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'm struck with here, and also our conversation last week, is so much of this comes down to just wisdom. Like, what does love call me to in this moment? And to understand, the different drives that may be pushing us one way or the other. And especially, like, one way or one time I think I need to be extra careful of avoiding the demands of love is at a time when love is hard. Like, if I've, say, had a fight with somebody. Yeah. And I know that love means having the hard conversation and reconciling, but that's when suddenly, like, I really need to do the dishes, like, but actually I don't.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a highly distracted person. I forget a lot of stuff, and I don't know. You can tell me. I was like, I don't think forgetting something is sinful in its own right. Right? I'm absent-minded, but I also know I have tools that help me to remember things, and sometimes I actively don't use the tools or the techniques, right? Because I kind of want to forget or ignore something. Right? Well, now we're getting into a situation, and it is this case of like when you were saying the fighting or relationships is like love is hard, and I think of like the idea of, don't go to bed angry, for spouses. You hear sometimes that wisdom. And my wife and I kind of were like, we don't really believe in that. Okay. Now, I have qualifiers to that. Was the idea of avoiding a hard conversation, avoiding the work of reconciliation. No, that's a problem. That's a sin that needs to be addressed. Yeah. But it's also like we have to know what is healthy and right. There is times when you've had a fight or an anger or a parishioner is blown up at you or whatever that maybe you need to have space. Yeah. Right? But if there's a broken relationship, a relationship needs healing. So it does eventually need to be addressed and come to. Yeah. And so sometimes for us it is in 20 minutes or an hour that maybe we address something. But sometimes I know that my wife and I'm more of I screwed up, I want to fix it instantly. That's my disposition. Yeah. Or my wife is like, maybe we have an explosion, and Sharon would say like, she has a harder time getting out of guilt or shame or feeling bad, knowing that she needs to do the work. And just like, it just takes her a little bit longer. Yeah. And so we notice sometimes it doesn't happen at night, but it's usually the next morning at coffee because she just has to sit with it for a while. And so we've learned that, but it is also like, but we can't let it go 5 days or 7 days, right? Like eventually.
And that's a great example of the point of how behind all of these sins is a legitimate desire wrongly pursued. Yeah. And what you're describing is sometimes of the need to take that time. Like that is a legitimate thing. Mm-hmm. But the difference, I think, as you've been saying is, am I taking this moment for the sake of being able to reconcile according to love? Yeah. Or am I taking this moment and I'm just going to keep on taking it because I really don't want to respond to the demands of love here? Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so it's easy, maybe not easy, but easier to understand potentially in the sense of like person-to-person relationships. So my question to you, or maybe suggestion, is like, how does that play out with God? Yeah. in terms of our struggle with God or not reconciling. Not that God reconciling to us, is more kind of the other way, but like where maybe we get angry at God or there's a sin or a pain of the church, and how we work through that, right? And our personal responsibility, and then also as a church maybe.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think maybe the first thing I'd want to consider is like, what are the reasons that I find it hard to act out my love for God? And sometimes it is a matter of like anger or disappointment. I've been praying for something and it's not coming and I get frustrated with God. Sometimes it's a matter of like boredom in the relationship as well. That prayer is just not fun sometimes, right? And it's dry and it's difficult. So I think one thing that helps for me is first to acknowledge what the difficulty is when it's there. And then to like one way that I've found that sloth gets me, like sometimes it is the laziness kind of sloth. It's just easier to be on Netflix or whatever, rather than making time for prayer. That happens. Sometimes too, though, there is the busyness sloth in terms, and I've had it happen times when I go to pray, and suddenly, like right when I sit down, I think of all the emails I need to be writing, or like all the books I need to be reading, and these things that are good in their own will all like flood my head as soon as I sit down to pray. Yeah, and it is very possible as a priest to fill your day with busyness and never spend time with the Lord.
And I love, I'm sure we've talked about it before, but the Screw Tip Letters, by C.S. Lewis. And so it's the conversation right between like kind of these demons and whatever. And but there's many occasions where sometimes it's like, oh, just give them a thought or a distraction, right? Because suddenly they're going to go to God. And so we want to like, oh, you left the oven on or something. I mean, turn your oven off. That's important.
That's a fair one.
But it is true, right? That I just relate to that so much that suddenly I sit down, I'm going to take my 10 minutes and then suddenly these flood of distractions, or
but supper.
Suddenly these urgent things come up, and that's where I think it's always a constant struggle and battle for me. Is carving out set times for God. If it's family devotions or even coming to Mass on Sunday or going to Source. Like making little commitments of things, because once they're more entrenched, they push back on some of that. The wave of distractions or of busyness, right? But it's like, no. Me and God, at 6 a.m. on Thursdays, most of the time I'm good for that for our guys group, unless I sleep in or my baby's up, But it's the times when I don't have some of those set routines that it's really hard to like stop that stream of, of busyness, right? And it's a scary thing to kind of examine of how many insignificant things we really let kind of rule our day.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I know just in terms of like leadership training and stuff, there's a distinction between the urgent and the important. And things that are urgent are sometimes not as important, but because they're urgent, we can spend our day doing these little things.
Yeah.
And the important things never get done.
Yeah.
And prayer is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
That can easily be pushed to the side if we're not aware of.
I believe that's the Eisenhower matrix. If you're interested in that, you can
I
Google
was not
that.
particularly, but
There you go.
Good to cite sources, though. That's fair.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's been a lot of talk there on the resistance to the demands of love.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the other definition that's similar, but comes at it from a slightly different way of aversion to the divine goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And there, too, I use the example of, say, a teacher or coach who sees greatness in a student. And so they're pushing the student and encouraging them and challenging them and supporting them. And I can imagine happening at times when the student might begin to resent that, because greatness, too, like love, it takes discipline, work, sacrifice. And maybe I don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And you're mentioning you'd come across some of this yourself?
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard work, right? We tell the stories of Michael Jordan, taking free throws and, getting cut in his high school team and doing the hard work. And it's playing out, we're homeschoolers and we try to end the beginning of June, officially a lot of our stuff. And, my daughter's, she was doing catch up for math at the beginning of the year, and she caught up a little bit from some stuff from last year over the summer, and then was plugging through this year. And like, she's so close. And it's like those last few days, suddenly it seems, the finish line is a mile away. And it's like, you got like 3 chapters, like a chapter a day, like it's just the worksheets. She's done all the lessons. Like, you just got to do the work so we can take the test and you can be done. Yeah. And you could just see it, and we're encouraging her and going in there, but you could just see this resistance of like,
I just don't want to do it.
I'm just done, know, and can we just be done?
Such a nice day
then,
outside.
It's stretched a little bit longer where she could have been done earlier, and you could just see it's like, and as we've had these conversations to kind of say like, you can put it off, like that's fine, but it will be there tomorrow. Yeah, like it's not, that doesn't,
and that's the legitimate desire too, because sometimes you need to take a break.
Yeah.
But to take a break for the sake of doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, and being honest with that of why you're doing that. And I do see, though, honestly, in a lot of the work that I do with young people, and when I've given presentations and that type of stuff, or even just speakers talking to teens, maybe it's just in the time that we're in. But I frankly find that the call to greatness is received generally well. I don't think it's resented too much now, because I think sadly we live in a culture that often
doesn't tell people that that they're called to greatness.
Right? You're called to be comfortable. And so that opposite kind of message is kind of received well, right? It helps maybe, young people, and I think adults as well, to look in to say that divine goodness. I am called to partake, right, and to do great things, and to partake in the mission of God, and that's exciting and that's thrilling, and it creates opportunities, and generally that's received very well. Where I think. I don't know if you went into it too much here, but where I do find sometimes that falls is when we just like throw it out there, call people to be great, but then don't accompany or help them along the way, right? Yeah. It's like a coach saying, be better, but then not giving them
help you,
but not giving the criticism or the critique of like how you can fix your shot to make the free throw better, right? Yeah. And then that's where I think there's kind of resentment, where it's like, people,
that's a great point.
You should be better, or often we say it to ourselves. Yeah. But then we don't kind of examine what's the path to better. Yeah. Like, what's the path to virtue where I need to grow.
And that's great, because that can get into a little bit of the 2 lies of sloth that we noted here. Yeah. And the 2 lies being, that's too hard and you're not good enough. And I see how that is often where the resentment could come if someone is telling you, like, because there's a line too between like, you can be great and like, I don't know, be better than this. Because one can be very hopeful, one can be very like demeaning in a way. Yeah. Right. But also, if we do have this sense in ourselves that this greatness that I'm called to is too hard, and if I'm not good enough, and if I can't do it, that's that can build some resentment for sure. I was struck too on this, talking about our aversion to the divine goodness within us. That one of the lines that I mentioned, reflecting on the gospel, is that that God wants to root out all sin in us. Like that is the goodness that he calls us to, rooting out all sin.
Mm-hmm.
And why might I resent that? Sometimes I like some of the sins that I do. Like I maybe like
yeah, let's be real.
Don't always in fact want God to root out all, and I like ultimately I do, right? I don't want to go too far that way.
Yeah.
But sometimes in the moment, it's an uncomfortable thing to have a new sin like made real to me, and then to realize I need to root it out. Like it's a challenging thing.
And that's the tension. That's that battle of like, right now, I do just want to watch hockey for the next 3 weeks, you know, and hang out outside. But I also want to exercise to be in good shape, to be able to play sports with my kids and not be exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. And both are then held, right? So in the moments, like I want to watch Netflix or I want to watch the hockey game, but I know I have half an hour to get a run in.
Right.
But I'm going to watch the pregame show, which really nothing important is said. But I could have gone my run in if I wanted to go, right? And but it is sometimes that belief of like you're not good enough or it's too hard. And it's like, well, you know, Colin, like you always start things and you never finish, right? Like we've talked about it before. It's like these soundtracks, like these lies that really implant. And a book I really enjoyed was from Chris Stefanik, a speaker. I think the book is just called I Am. And he kind of has a series of talks and stuff go on it. But essentially, I think it's 30 or like 33 days, whatever, one of those things.
Yeah.
But basically of statements of I am something. But they're all statements of like who you are in the eyes of God, not of yourself.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of like unpack a lot of these lies, or just affirm to say like, I am loved, I am chosen, I am a daughter of God, a son of God, you know, and I'm beloved, and I am capable, and it's just really
and these
good.
Things we do need to hear.
Yeah, these messages to go, because some of these lies just really do get entrenched, and I think for me, I struggle sometimes of letting my past define my future, right? So even my past failings, not even in terms of results, but sometimes of sin. And even though maybe I've confessed some of that, and I've maybe, you know, pushed back a lot of vices and really made some big growth, it's easy to think you're one step away, right? And you can just jump right back to that. And I mean, that's true to some degree, but there is also a little bit of an element of that's a lie of I don't really believe that I'm truly free.
Right. Yeah. Or being defined by our past sin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another real danger, too, that I think is worth noting here that I did mention, too, is that sin of Pelagianism.
Yeah.
Which is the idea that holiness is my job. And that's where I do, like, anytime I talk about this call to greatness, like, it is so important. As you mentioned, like, the coach who says, be better and doesn't help, versus a coach that says, you know, you can do this, and then equips people to do it. Like, God is the second kind of coach. And he's not the one who says, be better or you're going to hell. Like, that's not the Lord that we have. He says, like, you are capable of such greatness. And then he walks with us and gives us the grace to rise and be transformed into that.
Yeah. And I loved, you know, that idea of the aversion to that divine goodness and partaking. And, you know, it was the Feast of the Holy Trinity, and this idea of like, and you were talking about wisdom. And I was like, this season of like, this is the beauty of the Holy Spirit. Like of the Holy, right? Like the Holy Spirit is there to help you, to encourage you, and to give you grace to activate, right? It's like the coach is on the floor with you. You know, it's like actually helping you catch the ball. And if we're going to keep this analogy going, like, and I need that reminder all the time, right? Is to say, and if you look at the stories of the saints, it's like the more they draw closer to God and surrender to God, and Mother Teresa saying, we're too busy, now it's 2 hours of prayer, not an hour of prayer. You know, those stories is let God do the work in us, you know, like there's such the level of humility and surrender that is necessary.
Right? And I find for me a big part of being able to let that happen is having a vision of like, how he made us to be, and the kind of love that he would make us for. And if I have a good picture of that, then I'm able to open to that and let God begin to work that out in me.
Yeah. I love kind of just how you said that is what's the picture? You know, and it's the image, and it's a popular, you know, Christian worship song of like good Father, right? And I think Bob Rice, who's a Catholic speaker, does a little clip on like who is Jesus to him and who he thought of him as a kid and as a teenager, and God the Father was like, we often have very distorted views, and sadly a lot of that comes from wounds, you know, from life experiences, and that really can hold us back into drawing closer to God and inviting God deeper into our life, because it's like, well, the God that I'm kind of pictured or encountered in my life experience is like, I don't want that God in my life, right? You know, And that's a tough thing to struggle through, right? It's, we're not going to go all into that, but that's like a struggle of faith and relationship and reconciliation and everything that, that's going on recently in the news, right? With the 215, little children, and that work of where's our personal responsibility? Where's our church responsibility? And and how we really frame the work, who God is and the work of God, and also the failings of his followers and the failings of myself, and being able to distinguish between the two. It's hard and it's tricky, and it goes back to that love is hard, right? It's hard.
Yeah, and
work.
this really, this example of these Graves 215 children they found at the residential school in BC, it again, puts before us the demand of love. And I mentioned this quickly in the homily because I know there can be a tendency or temptation to say, well, like, I don't want to face that. Yeah. So let's just leave the past in the past. I don't want to hear about it. But clearly that is not what love requires. Love requires that we face this and we admit the fault and share the pain and share the suffering and work to reconcile. Yeah. So this is just, to me, a really strong example of where we face that love is hard and we feel the resistance and we know the call to push through it and to respond in love.
Yeah, I mean, I that's simple and profound and just challenging, right? And is like, are we gonna avoid or are we gonna lean in? I have to lean into my marriage. I have to lean into, who we are as citizens in this country and our history and our future,
and lean into reconciliation. As well.
And that plays out on all these levels, right? 100%. Anything else for us before we wrap up this series, I guess?
Yeah, that's a big question too. Well, I guess I hope that's what's comes through this overall is, first of all, like that vision of holiness, the vision of love that God made us for. And then also recognizing the weakness or the ways that sin can get a hold of us. But that is, really for the sake of letting God work in us to free us from that and to free us from all of these sins we've been looking at over the last 7 weeks.
I think for me, echo a lot of that, but also the couple words that have come to me over this whole series have been, you brought it up earlier, was the need for wisdom, and for me, examining. And this has been a good series to examine and to say, take those little, 3-5 minutes each day or once a week to kind of just like take an assessment of how am I doing on these fronts, and I appreciated just going through this. Say there's legitimate desires here, but they can be twisted and torn asunder, and we can get off track, but we can always get back on track. Yeah. And, I always love we live in hope, and we know that we're not alone. So I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys enjoyed this little series too. I don't know what's next. I don't know, it's summer if you do a series or what's,
you got, if you want to tease anything. Like if he's the bottom of Christ this Sunday, we'll focus in on that. And then I've been thinking about something about if this reopening continues as it's going, like one thing I'll be reflecting on a lot is really like, where do we go from here? What is God calling us to in these next months? We also have done in the summer before, we've done the Stump the Priest series. People send in questions that I try to answer in homilies as they apply to the reading. So that's kind of where my head is so far. But
okay,
we'll see where that goes.
You got a couple of weeks to push Father Matt one way or the other. We'll see where it goes.
I'm not doing homily requests here, but if people want to send me something.
But I'm excited. Either one, a little bit of both. I think that's good stuff. I'm excited to see where we go. And we hope you're well, and we're excited to see more of you here on the weekends, and we're excited to see what the Lord has in store for us. But until we see you again, take care. Oh, and I guess we should mention we're in the process. It's not wrapped up. We all a little tech stuff behind, but we are officially pretty close here. This series of this being officially an audio podcast, so an official podcast feed. And so we'll tease that out maybe over the next week or two as we wrap things up. But if you're excited, you're on Spotify and your podcast and Apple iTunes, we're coming to you, and a few different other ways as well on that thing. So stay tuned for that as well.
That's right. Thank you.
All right. See you soon.